We're looking at thousands of government workers being pushed out of their agency. And this is really just the beginning. Throughout the year, we're going to be seeing federal agencies becoming a lot smaller. Why is this happening, and what are the consequences? NASA has over 2,000 senior ranking employees set to leave the agency. They're not just any worker. These are people that fall between GS-13 and GS-15, which is considered by a lot of people to be the senior level. So these are individuals probably making around $150,000 a year, mainly in Texas and in Maryland. Now, a third of them are GS-15s, so their salaries are probably hovering around that $200,000 a year mark. NASA currently has 10 regional centers, each one with a unique role. So in Maryland, they're losing 600. If you look at Florida, they're losing 300. Texas and DC, they're also losing 300. So it's not just people. This is going to impact the mission. What is the mission right now over in NASA? What are they working on? Well, number one is returning to the moon, Mars exploration, AI and robotics, and space tech development. That's right, we're planning to return to the moon, to put some astronauts on the moon once again. It is supposed to be happening in 2027. At some point in 2027, we should be hearing it, we should be seeing it, it should be streaming somewhere. At the same time, we're also planning to go to Mars, to find some of those Mars rocks, to bring those back over here so we can study them. Now with NASA, you have to understand that 50% or more, it's likely more, they're supported by private companies, by contractors. Some of the top companies include SpaceX, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, Boeing, and Blue Origin. The pivot to relying on the private sector, well, it's been happening for a while now, but the real inflection point is probably under good old President Bill Clinton during the 1990s. He made some decisions, and it was decided that we would have a heavy reliance on defense contractors when it comes to accomplishing a lot of our missions. NASA's budget is around $25 billion, and it spends about 75% of that on contractors. When NASA works with contractors, you will see NASA, they will assume the leadership role. So when it comes to oversight and making decisions, that would fall on federal employees within the agency. And the contractors, they could be relied upon for their technical expertise and also to do a lot of heavy lifting. But at the end of the day, who says yes, no, go, stop? It would be the federal employee, probably at the executive level within the agency. This is very typical on how it works in other agencies. Doesn't matter what you're looking at. Department of Justice, Department of Defense, Homeland Security, you will have contractors that are being used for coding. They're being used for database management or their technical proficiency in some area. And they work side by side with the federal employee, but usually when it comes to IT and things like that, it's the contractor that's doing a lot of the technical work. Of the senior staff that are leaving, 85% of them are within the core mission area when it comes to science or human space flight. The other 15%, they're in more supporting roles. And this is something that we've been seeing more when it comes to the Trump administration. They look at the critical positions, let's say for the VA, that would be doctors and nurses and physician assistants. But when it comes to the supporting positions, finance, HR, IT, a lot of the supporting positions, they actually seem to be viewed lower than the critical position. And when it comes time to do a reduction in force or layoffs or target somebody, it's the supporting roles that get hit first a lot of the times. And that could be a huge mistake because some of those supporting roles are crucial, they're necessary, and without them, the critical position guys, they're not able to do their job. So for these over 2,000 NASA workers, these GS-13s and above, what is waiting for them? Where are they going to go? Because you could easily find yourself in a position like this. Maybe you're a GS-13, GS-14, or you know somebody who is. What does that transition look like? Are there similar positions out in the private sector? Can they easily go and find another job that's comparable? Well, they're probably going to have to look at being a contractor in the aerospace and defense sector. This is what we were just talking about. This is the never-ending dance of contractors becoming federal employees and federal employees becoming contractors, and it goes on and on. And really somebody that worked in NASA at this level, they probably could be a program manager or a government liaison or something like that. Then there's the commercial space or tech startups. This is if the person has an engineering background or a regulatory affairs type background. They could work at Rocket Lab, probably Amazon, Sierra Space, places like that. And then there's other federal agencies. This is basically a moonshot for 2025. What we've just witnessed is the third hiring freeze of 2025 going out to October 15th or October 16th. And as you know, the mission is to reduce all federal agencies. So if you're trying to make a lateral move, you're probably not going to have that much success unless you specifically target the Department of Defense or maybe the Department of Homeland Security. But we're looking around. You see, the Department of State, when I woke up this morning, the Department of State laid off over 1,000 people already. And we're going to see more and more as the days progress into weeks and months. That is the primary objective. So this is probably not what people in NASA are looking to do, or they probably shouldn't. That shouldn't be their plan A. Maybe it's plan B. Okay, so then the question is, why does it matter? Why do we care that federal workers are being lost if the majority of the technical expertise is in the contracting community? Then who cares? Just get rid of them, maybe save some money. Well, there's still a role for a federal employee over there. And it's really three main areas is what you're looking at. Number one is it could damage institutional capability, oversight, and long-term mission integrity. I know it's hard for a lot of people to believe, but there's institutional knowledge within that agency. There are people that stay in agencies for 10 plus years, 20 plus years that have knowledge of the processes and system and how that agency functions, and they understand who's in what office and how to get things done quicker. And you lose that. You lose efficiency when you start pushing people out. When you create that type of environment, you never know who you're going to lose. It's not like you can say, well, I just want to push out 1,000, but the 10 best out of that 1,000, I want you guys to stay. People are not obligated to stay there for any reason. Okay, now let's shift to NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, which is facing its own crisis. So allegedly, this agency has lost over 1,800 employees since the start of this year, since the start of the Trump administration, and they currently have 3,000 openings in which they need somebody in those slots, but they're currently empty. And that is a huge gap for an agency that could potentially save lives. Recently in Central Texas, flooding killed over 100 people. And while NOAA and the National Weather Service, they're saying they sent out the warning in time. They had enough hours to react to it. They're saying that staffing was not an issue. Even though this agency is massively understaffed throughout the entire country, they're saying in this spot in Texas, it was not an issue. We still have senators that are concerned. Senator Chuck Schumer even called for an investigation into how these cuts impacted the response. A full investigation by the Office of Inspector General and by the Government Accountability Office, at a minimum, it'll take 3 months. Probably take 6 or 9 months. In all actuality, if you really want to be realistic about it, probably 9. I wouldn't be surprised if it took 12 months. But that's where they go through and they have the interviews and they start doing the research and pulling the facts and they're pulling the data and they're trying to match it up. So we'll have a clear answer by then. But this is what we know right now. In 2024, they had over 12,000 employees. And right now, they have around 10,000. So in the first 6 months of the Trump administration, an agency that was already understaffed, it was understaffed during Biden, but an agency that was understaffed, it shrank by 2,000 or by close to 20%. Now, whether or not this had an impact in Texas, maybe it did, maybe it didn't. But the real question after this is, will it have an impact for the next climate disaster, for the next tragedy? Will this have an impact? Now we have new leadership. Neil Jacobs. This is President Trump's nominee to lead the NOAA. During a Senate hearing, he said that restaffing the National Weather Service was a top priority. He said it's really important for the people to be there because they have relationships with people in the local community. They're a trusted source. So it sounds like he wants to rebuild the trust. And instead of having His people in district offices, he wants them more embedded with the community, which sounds like a great plan, but there's some problems with that, right? There's some obstacles. You got NOAA facing a 27% budget cut for 2026. And then there's the government-wide hiring freeze, at least until October. Jacobs admitted restaffing is not going to be quick, especially with the hiring freeze. Now, you can have positions that are exempted for public safety. That's one of the categories. But it takes time to get granted an exemption. And if you look at, what is it called? The merit hiring plan, that plan has a goal in there. They want to hire people into the federal government within 80 days. If you take into consideration how much paperwork goes into trying to request an exemption, it's probably going to take a lot longer than that for the NWS. What cuts mean in real life is the meteorologists are overworked and vacancies mean fewer eyes on the data. This isn't just about weather. This is about food security, climate research, and public safety. So like we were just talking about, we got the hiring freeze to contend with. If you want more information about the latest hiring freeze and what to expect, then I want you to check out this video next. Stay updated by signing up to the free newsletter down below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.